Mike Tyson was once a force of nature, a name powerful enough to silence entire arenas before he even stepped into the spotlight. He arrived like a storm the world was not prepared to face. A young man whose fists seemed to carry the weight of every wound he had earned in the streets of Brooklyn. At just 20 years old, he became the youngest heavyweight champion in history, knocking out men twice his size with such absolute ferocity that even veteran fighters spoke of him in reverent whispers. For a time, he appeared unstoppable, a living myth who moved through fear as though it were nothing more than air. But legends rarely rise without shadows, and Tyson's shadows grew long. Behind the knockouts and the glory lived a boy shaped by hunger, violence, abandonment, and a grief so deep it carved permanent scars into the man he would become. Every victory echoed with a past he could never outrun, and every headline concealed a truth the world refused to see. Now, at 59, the storm that once roared within him has quieted into something far more layered and complex. His body carries the wear of years spent pushing beyond human limits, and his heart holds stories of love, regret, loss, and redemption. The man who once terrified the world now rises each morning to confront battles no opponent ever placed before him. Fading strength, lingering trauma, fragile health, and memories that refuse to rest. If Mike Tyson has ever moved you, inspired you, or left you in awe, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue honoring stories of resilience like his, Mike. Tyson's earliest memories were not of triumph, but of instability. Born on June 30, 1966, in Fort Greene Hospital, he entered a world already broken apart. His biological father, P.S.L. Tyson, vanished before Mike could ever form a memory of him. For a short time, another man, Jimmy Kirkpatrick, stepped into the role of father. A presence delicate enough to offer hope, yet temporary enough to deepen the wound when he left. By the time Mike was 2 years old, he had already been abandoned twice. Those losses etched a painful truth into him long before he had words to understand it. He was a child who learned very early that people leave. Left alone with 3 children and very little support, his mother, Lorna Tyson, fought every day to keep the family afloat. Exhaustion rested on her shoulders like a permanent burden. They moved between crumbling apartments until they finally ended up in Brownsville, one of New York's most dangerous neighborhoods, a place where survival required alertness, toughness, and luck. Their apartment was drafty, the food was inconsistent, and the atmosphere was thick with the quiet shame of poverty. Mike's oversized glasses and soft lisp only deepened his isolation. Bullies targeted him without mercy, and he drifted through classrooms and sidewalks like someone the world had decided not to see. Years later, he would sum up that period with a simple sentence that explained everything. People looked right through me. Without a father figure and with a mother overwhelmed by her own hardships. Mike learned quickly that protection was not something he could depend on. Shame settled deep inside him. Loneliness became his closest companion. And for a boy so young, with nowhere to place his fear, anger began to fill the empty spaces where compassion should have reached. And yet, in the middle of all that chaos, he found something gentle. On the rooftop of their building, high above the broken sidewalks, lived his pigeons, the first creatures he ever truly felt connected to. He built their coops from scraps of wood, fed them crumbs saved from school lunches, and whispered into their feathers secrets he could never trust another human being with. They made him feel visible in a world that treated him as if he were invisible. He would later say, "They were the first things I ever loved." That fragile sanctuary was shattered one afternoon when a neighborhood boy grabbed Mike's favorite pigeon and killed it in front of him. To the outside world, it may have seemed like nothing more than a cruel prank by a child. But to Mike, it was devastation. Everything he had poured into that small creature, every bit of softness he had been too afraid to show, vanished in that moment. Something inside him broke, and a fire awakened in him, born not only from rage, but from humiliation and the quiet terror of feeling powerless once again. That day marked the beginning of a shift. He fought back. He made a vow he would spend the rest of his life trying to honor. He would never allow anyone to make him feel small again. That vow led him into the streets, where belonging felt easier to earn than acceptance. He drifted toward older boys who ran with a local crew known as the Jolly Stars. They offered him a version of family built on fear and loyalty rather than love. But for a neglected boy, even that imitation of connection felt meaningful. He ran errands, followed their rules, and sank deeper into a world shaped by survival instead of hope. Detentions piled up, police reports became routine, and by the time he was 13, he had been detained nearly 40 times. Each arrest blurred into the next until his life began to look like a cycle he could not escape. When the streets became too cruel, he would hide in abandoned buildings, punching the air in hollow rooms where his anger bounced off cracked walls. It was a childhood defined by wounds instead of guidance, fear instead of safety, and silence instead of comfort. Yet even in its darkest corners, fate was quietly leading him toward the one man who would change his life forever. It is astonishing how a single moment, a single glance from the right person can redirect a life the world has already given up on. For Mike Tyson, that moment came inside the bleak walls of the Tryon School for Boys. He was 14 years old, angry, wounded, and drifting deeper into a future shaped by violence instead of possibility. Most adults saw only a troubled kid heading nowhere. But one afternoon, when Bobby Stewart, a counselor and former boxer, watched Mike hit the heavy bag, he stopped cold. There was something raw inside the boy, power, yes, but also longing, a desperation to matter, and a silence so heavy it could break your heart if you listened closely enough. Stewart decided to test him. The early training sessions were brutal. Mike's punches were wild, fueled more by fury than technique, but the potential was undeniable. After months of discipline, sweat, and emotional restraint, Stewart made the decision that would change everything. He brought Mike to a small gym in Catskill, a place worn by time, but filled with a presence so powerful it seemed to hum through the walls. There, in the dim light, stood Kuste single quotes Amato Kuz was an aging trainer with a gravel-soft voice and eyes, sharp enough to cut through the armor Mike had spent years building around himself. The boy expected judgment, disappointment, and rejection. Instead, when Kuz looked at him, he saw not the crimes on his record or the rage clouding his face. He saw greatness. He saw destiny. Then he spoke a sentence that dropped into Mike's life like a stone into still water, sending ripples that would never stop moving. I believe you can be the youngest heavyweight champion in the world. Those words were more than encouragement. They were salvation. No one had ever expected anything from Mike. No one had ever given him hope. And suddenly, he was standing before a man who believed in him so fiercely it felt like someone had thrown him a lifeline across the darkness. Kuz did not just open his gym to Mike, he opened his home and his heart. The boy who had slept in broken apartments now slept under a roof, where someone left a hallway light on simply to let him know he wasn't alone. More than power, more than fame, what Mike truly craved was belonging, and Kuz gave him that. But belonging came with demands. Training under Kuz was not merely physical labor. It was transformation. 4 in the morning runs through the freezing streets of Catskill carved discipline into Mike's bones. 2,000 squats, endless sit-ups, neck exercises that left him trembling, and sparring sessions with grown men who hit with the purpose of turning him into steel became part of his life. Kuz knew exactly what he was doing. He was not just building a fighter. He was rebuilding a broken boy. He taught Mike the peekaboo style, a dance of controlled chaos. Slip by inches, counter with intention, move with purpose. Every motion became a declaration of character. In time, Mike became something extraordinary, not just powerful, but strategic. Not just fierce, but focused. He learned to understand fear, not as shame, but as fuel. Kuz often told him, the hero and the coward feel the same thing. It is what they do that makes them different. Those words became the backbone of Tyson's life. But even as Mike grew under Case's guidance, life delivered its first devastating blow. In 1982, at only 16, Mike lost his mother. Her death reopened the oldest wound inside him, one shaped by abandonment and longing. He cried not only because she was gone, but because she never lived long enough to see him become something more than the broken boy the world had labeled him to be. In that hollow grief, Cus stepped forward not just as a coach, but as a father. He adopted Mike, giving him a stability he had never known. Under that roof, Mike found not only discipline, but direction, purpose, identity, and, for the first time in his life, the belief that he might actually deserve the dreams someone else had seen in him. By the time Mike Tyson stepped into the ring for his professional debut in 1985, the prophecy Kuz had whispered into his life was already beginning to take shape. At just 18, he fought with a terrifying blend of precision and fury, ending his first opponent in under 2 minutes. That same year, he fought 15 times, an almost unthinkable schedule in modern boxing, knocked out every single man placed before him. He was not merely winning. He was devouring the heavyweight division with a hunger the sport had never witnessed. But behind the roar of the crowd, something sacred was missing. Cus D'Amato had died months before Tyson entered the professional stage. Though Mike kept rising, he often said it felt like climbing a mountain without the man who had taught him how to walk. Every victory cast a shadow, and every knockout carried a silence. Still, the ascent continued. In 1986, at only 20 years old, Tyson overwhelmed Trevor Berbick to become the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Berbick staggered across the ring as though gravity itself had turned against him, collapsing under the force of Tyson's fists. The arena exploded. The world stood breathless. And yet Mike's first thought was of Cus. He wished the man who had saved him could have been standing at ringside, watching destiny unfold exactly as he had predicted. The following year, Tyson unified the heavyweight division, collecting the WBA, WCB, and IBF titles through a storm of power and nearly flawless technique. Opponents fell in seconds, some never making it past the opening round. Boxing had never seen a champion like him, a man who moved with the speed of a middleweight and struck with the destruction of someone carrying every wound from his childhood in his fists. Then came the night that cemented his legend. June 27, 1988, Mike Tyson versus Michael Spinks. The fight had been promoted as a showdown between two giants, a battle that generated more than $20 million in pay-per-view revenue and earned Tyson a $22 million purse. Celebrities packed the arena, millions watched from home, and the tension was so thick it felt almost physical. Then the bell rang. 91 seconds later, it was over. Spinks lay on the canvas, staring into the lights as history shifted beneath him. Tyson moved through the ring with the calm of a man fulfilling a prophecy rather than celebrating a victory. It was a coronation disguised as a fight. The world bowed before the young king. But fame is a fragile crown, and the brighter the spotlight burned, the darker the shadows behind him became. After the glory came the unraveling. The pillars that had once kept Tyson steady began to collapse one after another. Jimmy Jacobs, his gentle manager and one of the few men who had truly guided him after Case's death, lost his fight with leukemia. Kevin Rooney, the trainer who had carried Cass's teachings into Tyson's early career, was pushed out of the team. In their place came voices full of temptation instead of truth, people who praised him too quickly, protected him too little, and indulged every impulse fame stirred within him. Tyson would later admit, "I was a kid with too much power and no one to tell me no." His discipline began to slip. Nights dissolved into chaos. Headlines became filled with controversy. His young marriage fell apart under pressures neither he nor his wife had the emotional tools to survive. Then, in early 1990, when Tyson stepped into the ring against Buster Douglas in Tokyo, the world expected another brutal and inevitable knockout. Instead, it saw the greatest upset in boxing history. Douglas rose from a knockdown with a fire Tyson could not match that night. And when the final combination landed, Tyson crashed to the canvas, dazed and fumbling for his mouthpiece in disbelief. It felt as if the floor of his life had cracked beneath him. That defeat was not born from a lack of talent, but from the slow internal erosion already taking place. And worse storms were still ahead. In 1992, Tyson faced a conviction that sent him to prison for 3 years. He later said that when the cell door shut, it sounded like his entire life had been locked away with it. Prison stripped him of noise, of pride, and of the world that had once bowed at his feet. It forced him inward for the first time. "I was lost," he would later say. "I didn't know who I was without the chaos." His release in 1995 was met with cheers, but the road ahead was no longer clear. His comeback fights still looked powerful, but they felt hollow. Then, in 1997, during the Holyfield rematch, frustration exploded into the infamous bite, a moment Tyson would regret for the rest of his life. The world saw madness. Tyson saw a man drowning in a lifetime of unprocessed pain. His decline continued into the early 2000s, ending in bankruptcy despite having earned hundreds of millions. And yet, even in that darkness, a small ember survived. The boy Kuz had once believed in was still there, buried beneath grief, mistakes, and exhaustion, but not entirely defeated. For a man who had spent his whole life fighting to survive, Mike Tyson's deepest wounds did not come from a punch or a fall from glory. They came from love, from the fragile hope that he could build the family he had dreamed of. As a lonely child in Brownsville land, from heartbreaks that shattered him far beyond the reach of any arena. His first serious attempt at stability came with Robin, given in the late 1980s. Tyson, undefeated in the ring but emotionally unsteady outside it, was drawn to her gentleness and calm. Their marriage in 1988 felt like a promise of peace, a chance to finally outrun the storms inside him. But fame magnified every flaw. Rumors drowned out their efforts at closeness, and 2 young wounded hearts collapsed under pressures they had never been taught how to carry. What the world treated as public drama was, in truth, to people overwhelmed by pain they didn't know how to name. Years later, neither spoke with anger, only sadness. After that chapter of chaos, Tyson found steadiness in Monica Turner, a Georgetown pediatric resident whose quiet strength calmed the volatility of his life. She stood by him through his prison sentence, waited for him when he was released in 1995, and married him in 1997. For a brief moment, Tyson tasted the life he had always longed for. Mornings with his children, Raina and Amir, and a home that felt safe. But peace is difficult to hold for someone who was never taught how to keep it. Old impulses, emotional distance, and the weight of unhealed wounds slowly wore down their marriage. Monica filed for divorce in 2003, and although headlines focused on the financial settlement, Tyson later said the real loss was the family he had believed would save him. Yet nothing compared to the tragedy that came in 2009. Her name was Exodus, a bright and joyful 4-year-old whose presence softened him in ways he had never imagined possible. Between 2003 and 2009, Tyson and Soul built an imperfect but loving home held together by the small wonders of raising children. Then came May 26, 2009, the day that split his life into before and after. Exodus became entangled in an exercise machine at home. Miguel, only 7 years old, witnessed the unimaginable. Sol tried desperately to save her child as paramedics rushed in. Tyson, in Las Vegas at the time, boarded the first plane to Phoenix, moving through the airport like a man already half broken. When he reached the hospital, he learned the truth no parent can survive. His daughter was gone. "There are losses that break a man," he later said. "And there are losses that erase him." He did not lash out. He did not blame Sol. He grieved in silence, letting the pain sink deeper into him than any blow he had ever taken in the ring. Their relationship could not survive the weight of that sorrow, yet their love for Exodus remained sacred. Tyson would later say that her memory did not destroy him, it pushed him toward transformation, toward becoming the man he had always hoped he could be. Her short life became a turning point, a rebirth forged not in victory, but in unbearable loss. There comes a moment in the life of every fallen champion when the cheers disappear. The lights fade, and the only opponent left is the reflection staring back. For Mike Tyson, that moment arrived after the scandals, the bankruptcy, the spirals of self-destruction, and the devastating loss of his daughter, Exodus. He no longer saw Iron Mike. He saw a man standing at the edge of a life he had nearly destroyed. And for the first time, he chose to fight for himself instead of fighting against the world. Tyson often says he rebuilt his life using the very qualities that had once fueled his chaos: discipline, honesty, fear, and humility. At 40, stripped of belts and certainty, he began the slow and painful work of becoming someone capable of peace. That rebirth did not begin in a ring. It began on a stage. In 2012, he stepped onto Broadway with his one-man show, Undisputed Truth. There were no gloves and no myth, only truth. He spoke openly about the wounds of his childhood, the illusions of fame, the grief of losing his mother, the mistakes he would carry forever, and the daughter whose memory reshaped his life. The world did not laugh. It listened. And for the first time, the legend bowed to the man. From there, a new life began to emerge. Film roles, television appearances, speaking tours, business ventures, and hotboxing. The podcast that introduced not the warrior, but the philosopher forged through suffering, helped create a different future. By the early 2020s, he had rebuilt a net worth of $25 to $30 million. Not through extravagance, but through structure and purpose. His Las Vegas home reflects that transformation. Sunlit rooms, earth-tone walls, a softly glowing meditation space, and a private gym designed for longevity instead of violence. The laughter of his children drifts across the tennis court where he watches Milan train every morning. It is not a palace. It is a sanctuary, the home he never had as a child, and the one he now protects with quiet determination. Slowly and deliberately, he expanded his real estate investments, choosing stability over spectacle. Even his cars reflect the man he has become, a carefully selected collection of classics, maintained with care rather than gathered through impulse. But Tyson's greatest evolution is visible in his body and in how he now treats it. The aches, the sciatica, and the stiffness all remind him of wars fought long ago. The ulcer scare in 2024 forced him to confront the ultimate truth. Time is undefeated. For once, he listened. He moved away from punishing workouts and toward protective ones. Meditation softened the storms inside him. Restraint replaced violence. And in that shift, he found a form of strength deeper than any knockout. His family now stands at the center of his life. Milan is rising in tennis. Morocco is growing with calm confidence. His older children are thriving in film, business, and creative fields. Whenever Tyson speaks their names, the fighter disappears and the father remains. "My kids are my redemption," he says. And every word carries the full weight of that truth. Yet the heart of Tyson's legacy lies in what he now gives back. The boy who was once abandoned now supports children who remind him of himself. He gives to youth centers, mental health programs, re-entry services, food outreach, and inner-city gyms. These are not publicity stunts. They are acts of gratitude, responsibility, and quiet redemption. In the end, Mike Tyson's legacy is not simply the ferocity of Iron Mike. It is the rebirth of a man who, after losing nearly everything, learned how to finally live with purpose. Now, at 59, Tyson stands not as a myth, a monster, or a fallen icon, but as a man who rose from the ashes of his own making, man who faced every version of himself, the champion. The child, the rage, the grief, the loss, and still chose to rise again. His story is no longer about knockouts. It is about transformation, reinvention, healing, and the breathtaking truth that even the most broken lives can be rebuilt through courage, humility, and a willingness to change. Mike Tyson's legacy is no longer defined by the violence of his fists, but by the strength of a man who finally learned how to hold his own heart. If Mike Tyson's incredible journey moved you today, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice helps keep these powerful stories alive. And if you would like to continue exploring the real lives behind the legends, remember to like this video and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter.